Okay, welcome everybody to the town board meeting of Tuesday, January 9th, 2018. And I will start off with some announcements, just have two quick announcements. Newcastle United for Youth presents vaping, juuling, and e-cigarettes. What you don't know can hurt your kids. And while our teens are well versed in vaping lingo, many are not well educated on the health risks that those devices present. There is a further knowledge gap between what our kids know and what we parents know. Save the date for an informative presentation about vaping, presented in collaboration with the Newcastle United for Youth, God bless you, the Chapakua Central School District, the Chapakua PTA, and the town of Newcastle and Northern Westchester Hospital Center on January 18th, 7 p.m. at the Horace Greeley High School Auditorium. And then Millwood Chico's first year anniversary party. That's Friday, January 26th, 5 to 9. That's it for the announcements. Actually, you don't have a supervisory report tonight. It's just going to be the year in review, and there's no way I'll be going through that right now. The town administrator's report with Jill Shapiro.
I'd like to wish everybody a very happy 2018, and we'd like to note some changes in personnel in our town clerk's office. I'd like to extend my personal thanks to Mary Deems for all she's done for the town. When the town needed someone who would step into the role of town clerk and receiver of taxes almost 4 years ago, Mary was willing to step up and accepted the challenge. With her usual grace under pressure and can-do attitude, Mary undertook this double role back in 2014 and has successfully supervised both departments since then. Mary has recently decided that she'd like to assist with the transition to the new leadership in those positions, and effective with the new year, she moved back to her role as deputy. Mary's institutional knowledge and vast experience will be critical to the success of those departments for years to come, and we congratulate Mary on a job well done. We also welcome Christina Papes to her new position as town clerk and receiver of taxes, and wish her much success in her role.
Speech.
Yay. In a minute, yes, she's coming. On some other housekeeping notes, Con Ed will be back in town this week to remove plates in the road and backfill and pave those holes. The blacktop plants are temporarily opening for the remainder of the week due to the break in the weather, and Con Ed's going to be taking advantage of that to try to restore our streets a bit. Just a reminder that our seasonal parking restrictions are in effect. So basically, there is no overnight parking on public roads from November 1st to April 1st, 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. Our town code also limits overnight parking in our public parking lots. In order for us to clear the public parking lots, November 1 to April 1, there's no overnight parking in the commuter lots except for the two designated areas, one by the skateboard park in the far rear of the commuter lot and in the triangle area adjacent to the town hall parking lot. This allows people who may need to leave their cars overnight during the winter season the ability to park with minimal disruption to our ability to clear snow. Just a shout out to our DPW highway and water units, because it was 30-something degrees today. Everybody may have forgotten how bitter cold it was over this past weekend. We had multiple water main breaks, and our water unit was out there in those frigid temperatures, repairing broken mains with minimal disruptions to the water service to those neighborhoods. And we really thank them for a job well done. Them and DPW, they did a fabulous job. Thanks. Christina?
Okay.
Just very quickly, I'd like to remind everybody that school taxes are due no later than January 31st if you'd like to pay them without penalty. We will accept them via mail with a official U.S. postmark no later than January 31st. And also thank the board for their appointment of me. I look forward to working with you all, and also thank Mary Deems for sharing her knowledge and experience and her continued work for the town clerk's office. And we hope to exceed all your expectations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What a nice speech. Okay, so now we have our rock star here, John Kazowick.
How you doing?
Good, John. How are you? Happy New Year. First town board meeting of the year for you.
Hello. How's everybody?
Good, so far.
Oh, so far so good. Okay, let me give you a breakdown where we stand right now. You just heard Kramer was back out today, filling in their holes and paving. I met with them this afternoon, and we're hoping in another 2 days they should have all their plates removed. It's my understanding there's 2 more connections they have to do for the main. and that is impacting what we are doing with the sewer line. We are at the first manhole that goes down Lower King, and the gas line that's existing, that they're abandoning, is still live because they haven't been able to do the final two connections to the new main. Even though the new main is pressurized up now with the gas, but to abandon the other one so that we can cut a section out to put the new manhole in. ELQ is already cored into the existing Westchester Health Department manhole. Everything's ready to go. We're just waiting for that to be abandoned, and then we will start with that first manhole going down Lower King. So this week, nobody's working this week at nights because of that. We are fully complete with everything for the water main, all the connections. The last little piece we had left had to be tested right before Christmas. That's all done. This week, we're working on the final as-built and all the service connections and the listings and everything to submit to the Westchester County Health Department. And we're hoping by next week, we'll have all the final numbers for everything that is involved with the water services, all the items and all that to be completed out with the next pay voucher. I spoke with ELQ on the little report that we put together. We have the new, more detailed, easier to read schedule that gives you more of just the major items, everything going on. But just so that you're aware.
Referencing.
Yes, referencing right there, the report. And what we're looking at now is first, second week in February, we're gonna start the drainage at the culvert by the gas station. To go into the culvert, that should take a couple of weeks because we have to, make a huge hole to put the big pipe in and everything. So they're gonna be starting that as a day operation, going towards downtown as the other crews come with the sewer line the other direction. And they're hoping to get to that intersection by the pizza station there. Then they're gonna go behind Dunkin' Donuts. We have work to do there, vortex and all kinds of drainage work that's back in that parking lot while they complete the sewer line. And then, once that's done, we'll be able to continue with the drainage going up South Greeley. We spoke, we're hoping to get the granite curb approval and the manufacturing of that to start at the beginning of March and doing curbs and sidewalks, starting out here by Town Hall. So we could, we have no other work besides that with the paving and everything else, but down to the gas station culvert. So that's what they're gonna start with that. Other than that, everything else is moving along. We're waiting to find out about, all the submittals are being put in now for the new light. I know Adam had asked about getting the decorative poles for the light. They have, instead of the regular aluminum ones that are the standard New York State DOT, and I found out that they
Traffic light.
are.
We're talking
The
about
traffic light, yeah, with the poles. And he had forwarded it to me. I sent it to my office. They are New York State DOT approved. So I'm waiting for a price from ELQ for the difference in them, to get them in the black with the fancier, cuts to them and everything else. So we're just waiting on that, but not holding anything up, but we're gonna move towards that, to do that. So, other than that, everything else is, moving forward.
I was just gonna say, how are we on schedule?
So it's good. He's fine. We really can't do anything at this point because of the weather, besides the
No, I'm just
drain-
saying versus original estimate
No,
of
he's
completion.
good. And when I met with Tim yesterday, Mike Nowak, their plan is to really hit this summer with a lot of crews, because they want,
Well,
they,
So the only thing I'm asking is, and I know you've been working and the report's getting better.
yeah.
Nice.
getting out of my-
You're
it's-
getting there.
You asked.
Totally working,
It's
but
it.
still needs a little work.
It's all right.
Still
I'm
needs a
sure
little
it
work.
is. We usually don't do them, but it's all good. But I'm getting it. So it's,
So what I was hoping to be able to have is you've got your compensation, you've got ELQ's compensation. Within ELQ's work, I saw that you broke out some of the discrete tasks, sort of as it sort of progresses throughout. But I think what would be good on the report template that I had given you, what we had is the original schedule, and then, sort of the revised schedule,
okay, yeah.
so that we can actually keep track of it. Because if we're gonna be bumping into the 2018 Christmas season, I think, we need to know that. I know you can make up time in the summer,
Yeah, no,
and I know
he's-
you have a bunch of things, but I think it would be beneficial. It's like all good, and I'm sure that everybody's doing a really good job. And
Yeah, no, I'll talk to Mike Noah, because what I can do is, he just sent that to me like 2 days ago. I'll ask him to take his original schedule and consolidate it into that, what it was originally, so that you can see what the comparisons
and even-
were. Because the other one is just, it's huge with
yeah,
all
yeah.
the
Well, even if I don't even know if we need the blue lines, I think what we need is the original schedule,
scheduled dates and everything.
and then the scheduled dates of what we had hoped to be able to, and where we are on the revised schedule, and if there's going to be a delay. Ideally, what would happen, I think, what I had is kind of a few little bullet points whenever something like that was happening, to explain what's the cause of the delay, so that should there ever be a, God forbid, a dispute,
Yeah.
we actually have a written record, and it wasn't sort of, I remember that meeting we had?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
know what I mean?
At this point, the only thing we've run into so far is this gas line,
Yeah.
which is, and this just happened over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they sent us a letter saying, because the conflict actually was with, the biggest problem was the conduits from Verizon. And that's even worse, because now you have to deal with a Verizon. You're not dealing with Con Ed, which is a little bit,
No, it's
Or-
fine, and I'm sure that it's
you know.
inevitable that, look, a big
Yeah.
project like this, it's not gonna be 100% thing, and you'll have to compensate where you can. I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but I think pragmatically, we need to know, and if there is a chronic problem, so for example, Verizon's not responding, or something else is going on, we have that in the records, and should Jill need to get involved, so we can bring our pressure to bear.
oh yeah, because we talk.
No, I know, I'm sure.
yeah, all
But
that-
still, I
and
think it
where
would
we
be
are, but
good for
yeah.
us to know, rather than just, it's all perfect, because a $14 million, $50 million project.
It's gonna happen. It's, the biggest thing, like what's happening now, was the fact that there's a 4-foot manhole there, and they've increased it to 7-foot. So when you're putting a 4-foot manhole back in a 4-foot manhole spot, it's a lot easier until all of a sudden,
Yeah.
now we had conduits on both sides. They were actually, one was built into the manhole, and we have 4 pipes coming into it, so it's not like you can say, okay, we'll move it over here a little
Right,
bit.
right.
Because then 2 of them don't line up anymore, and that was the problem with this one. The
Yeah.
one, once we get out of this, then everything straight runs. I don't see any other problems, but that's one of the reasons we said, don't bother even continuing. Have the bypass around it is all temporary, it's all set up. So we're at a point now where it's just a matter of this thing getting disconnected. And from the meeting I had today with them, it looks like by the end of this week, that'll be done.
Okay, then the other thing, and maybe Jill can work with you on this, I was also wondering, we've definitely, doing all the digging work, doing all the underground work, getting the sewer mains in, now we're getting in the stormwater management, all gas mains, all of this, like, sort of unsexy but essential stuff. Sort of as we come out of the winter weather, and start going into spring, summer, fall, is there a way that, whether it's 100% right or not, qualitatively, we could sort of understand what the condition of the town will be in? So, for example, if we wanted to do things in the downtown to help bolster the merchants, or if something else is gonna happen, we have a sense of, is it gonna be like it was this summer? Is it gonna be better? Or what's.
At this point, where we stand now, it's just very hard, because the original
Let me interrupt you,
design-
Kaz, for 1 second, because I want to piggyback off that as it relates to my question. If you look at your schedule, you're talking about the sanitary sewer and the storm drain from now until on about April 3rd. One of the issues that we've been dealing with is, and you're aware of it, not necessarily when I say your fault,
Yeah.
Con Edison, is jackhammering at night, disturbing people who have young children, just whomever it may be. So what can we expect? So again, to tie back to this, when you're talking about the condition of the town, what can we expect in the next few months for nighttime work that's not just mere inconvenience, that's a fact of life, but that's going to be more disruptive at certain hours?
Yeah, well, actually had the conversation today about that, because once we get across South Greeley and get on the east side, we're gonna have to take all that sidewalk out. So I actually met, after I talked with Jill, we had this discussion today, and I went and I met with Mike Nowak again to go over it. And because now it's gonna be in the sidewalk area and off the road, we're hoping that we can get a day crew there, like, maybe the crew that's gonna be doing the excavation and the connection for the drainage to the culvert to go and jackhammer it and get it ready so that when we come in at night, it doesn't have to be jackhammered, it just has to be removed. Again, I spoke with them also about possibly having them come in an hour earlier, like at
How's
six.
How's
I
that
think
gonna
part of
impact
that-
the merchants
Well, I was gonna say,
then?
part of this,
Well-
it's a difficult situation either way.
Right.
And what I think is critically important, and again, piggybacking now on everyone's issue here, is not just a schedule, if we can have it, that says sanitary sewer 28 days, obviously not married to it, through February 14th, but there's a way we can at least give the merchants and the homeowners notice that in a week from now, as best we can, there is going to be a removal of X sidewalk for X
Oh, yeah,
days who will
yeah.
be out. So almost on even a daily, expect this in 1 week, expect this in 7 days, 8 days, 9 days, et cetera, so that people can take the necessary steps and businesses can take the necessary steps.
Yeah, because once we get there and start doing.
Yes,
the
that can
sanitary-
happen?
Oh, yeah, I see them all the time. I talk to everybody. They
Well, it's
call
more than
me.
talking, because we
Yeah,
want
the
to,
merchants
we
I
want to
talk
send
to.
something out and let people know in advance so that someone who wants to put their 2-year-old to bed doesn't have to worry about da-da-da-da-da, and someone who was having a sale or just wants business knows that this day may be not as good as the next
So
day.
Jovan has been sending out actually daily updates as to where the work is being done at night when it comes to night excursion, night
far in
night
advance?
tours.
That's
and
every
chateaus.
day.
So is there a way to get something in
Right, so
advance?
what we would do is we would piggyback something like that. So we've got the 1 week and 2 week, well, the 2 week look aheads on the website. So what we would do is, in addition to that, when we shift out of,
But the 2-week look-aheads don't really give you a sense of what's, it's the
Right,
work,
Can't
but
just say
it
South
doesn't.
Greeley, would try to,
Right.
as best
right,
we
I
can,
understand,
to
but the
tighten it up.
reality is that they're working along that stretch, and because they're working along that stretch between 10 PM and, 5 AM in the morning, it isn't really that critical for people to know exactly where on North Greeley we are. There's going to be a detour there, you're gonna have to detour around it. When we start getting into the sidewalk work and more detailed, not more detailed, but
understand,
more,
I understand.
the streetscape, where it's gonna
Involved
be
more.
very,
More
we're gonna be.
intrusive. Yeah.
If that's
Well,
possible.
we're gonna,
Yeah,
what we do
we're-
is.
we will be doing it daily, where we have to show people exactly where we're gonna be. We'll be doing mapping, we'll be letting merchants know, we'll be letting the public
Advance
know
as best we
exactly
can.
know,
Yeah.
right, where we are and where we're gonna be.
And what we also did when we talked today was about possibly removing large sections of the sidewalk and steel plating it. So you'll have a sidewalk of steel plate that you can walk down without trip hazard, but at least we can get maybe from 6 o'clock at night till 10 o'clock at night, we can jackhammer
You
as much as
don't
we
wanna be
can.
jackhammering, I mean,
Yeah.
what I told John today is, you are not jackhammering anything downtown at night. That must
Yeah.
be day work,
So-
and you're gonna have to figure out how not to affect my merchants doing that. That's
Yeah.
his task.
So
Well,
we
can
get-
we find a happy medium and jackhammer from 5 to 8 or something like
Yeah, that's
that?
what-
You
yeah.
know, so it's
Possibly.
maybe not impacting merchants as much, but it's also not impacting people who want to put their kids to bed.
I think as harsh as it may sound, I'd rather impact a commuter spending an extra 3 minutes, 5 minutes getting home than some kid not sleeping or business losing business.
Yeah, and they're gonna do that. We talked to them about, like I said, maybe breaking it up with the jackhammers in a certain amount of time. We can just do it and just put steel plates over it so that people can walk, but we might have 3 days worth of sidewalk broken. And then when they come at night to do the new sewer line, we take the steel plate off, and now all you do is digging it out and moving as we go. And then we can try, like we were trying to do when we were working with Smith Street, trying to do the certain things at certain times to get it done so that it doesn't impact, because like everybody else, I don't want to.
Well, I'm assuming you're having a weekly meeting with the LQ to kind of go over.
Oh, every day.
No, I know, but I mean, there must be one where everybody's kind of brought in, all the contractors and subcontractors are brought in.
There's really, it's just ELQ and us.
It's just ELQ. So at some point, if the two of you could even just kind of like map out sort of the major things for the next month, and, even if you did give a written description of what it could be, Jill would probably be able to translate that into inconvenience.
We'll
and-
put it in for what it is. Yeah, and we put it on the website. We update the website with a 2-week look ahead, and we usually put stuff in there about safety and where we're gonna be to, and,
Yeah, it's
but
like a-
I just been trying, I know the problem with the jackhammer. So we've been, up till now, taking care of it. It's actually been Con Ed at the middle of the night that's been getting the phone calls, and they had the gas leak 2 days before Christmas, and they wound up jackhammering out that whole service line, which I found out the next morning that they were out there all night jackhammering. You know, because they couldn't hook the service back up because it was leaking, so,
All right, thank you.
all right? All right,
Thanks, Cass.
good night.
Thanks.
Warm. All right, so now, the county executive's on his way. I was told to be in about 20, 25 minutes. So we will go on to public comments, new business.
You wanna let-
No, we'll do the landmarks next, but, okay, no public comments, new business, so let's move on to, okay.
Rob Fleischer, Newcastle.
Time.
There you go. Still stale.
Yeah, Jane, I get a laugh
Move
from
to
Jane.
adjourn?
Just a couple of notes. One, I guess cable TV around town, I had mentioned this to you previously. A lot of people lost a lot of channels. It happens. I understand negotiations. I think the town's getting a bit screwed by Optimum. People got about 14 channels taken away.
Bloomberg, I'm really angry. FiOS too.
I don't know about Fios, but all I have is Optimum. But it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, Optimum has a contract with the town, correct? So it seems that
Altice was Time Warner? Cablevision, I'm sorry.
isn't Optimum Cablevision?
Well, that's, the
Is.
franchise,
This is,
yeah, I
well,
thought
the
Opera
the
is.
franchise covers the cable TV portion, not the internet service.
I'm talking about the
That's-
cable,
so about cable?
cable
Okay,
TV, yeah.
sorry.
So in that regard, it seems that on a collective basis, they owe the town some money. During this kind of dispute, I don't know, maybe they don't, but during this dispute, if they're not paying for, or they take away Stars and some two higher level channels than the crap they put on there, as a temporary filler, the longer this goes on, it seems to me like they're making a lot of money. Because I can't imagine the cost for the filler is what it is. I'm not looking for the money back myself, but maybe they should be making contributions to the town for the difference. I don't know how long this is going to go on. And you add up, I don't know how many, 5,000 households in the town, maybe half of them have cable TV. They're making at least $10 a month on this. I don't know. It's a thought. Somebody, you guys are the franchise coordinator. I think somebody should reach out. Another concept, you talked about the noise. The other thing to think about in terms of the noise, I don't know if it'll happen or the timing of the happening, but if they're going to jackhammer during the day, the Bell School windows are all right out there too. So I would hate to have them jackhammering and anybody who's got a window facing Greeley Avenue can't really get any work done. So please keep that in mind as well. And that's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have our public hearings. We have two, welcome Gray and Casey.
Cassie.
Cassie. What, should we start with a motion?
Yeah, I
Open the hearing?
move to open the public hearing on the landmarks of 2 Hamilton Drive and 39 Highland Avenue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Gray.
Okay.
You can move the mic
Yeah,
down a teeny bit if you
Yeah,
want.
yeah, well.
But just the,
Put
there
it
you go. there you
down here. There we go. I can hear myself in the back. Okay. In what order are they listed in your?
2 is
Hamilton
first.
Drive.
2 Hamilton Drive, present home of Eric Nicolason, whom you know. Built in 1929. Typical stockbroker Tudor. Very handsome, well done, done by, I have never, I don't know the architect, somebody in Scarsdale. But it was the home, it was built for Franklin Montross Jr., who was a very important citizen of that period. He was the first head of the Chappaqua National Bank, which managed to make it through the Depression just fine. He was also the president of Kensico Cemetery, and that's where he's buried. But anyway, he built this house for himself, and he built it to last. It is solid. And it's a very, very handsome of his sort. And if we can, well, let me describe the two houses, and quickly I'll show you pictures if it's possible. The second one is on Highland Avenue, which was a road opened up in the 1880s off of King Street when the land was really being built, broken up for village houses. And this was the first one on that street. Already the Second Friends Meeting House had been moved, the one where Habitat for Humanity is transforming into condos. But then this building was built by William J. Ackerley. And William J. Ackerley was a local boy, and he started out as a telegraph operator, trained by the telegraph operator in the station here. And he worked his way up to be head supervisor for Western Union at Grand Central Station. So he had a pretty substantial job. In addition, he was very active in local democratic politics and held a number of patronage offices. At any rate, he was doing pretty well for himself, or he thought so. And in the 1880s, he built this house in what we call the Queen Anne style, which is very picturesque. We don't have very many of them in town for some reason, just don't. But this is one. At that time, there were virtually no trees on the hillside, so you had this commanding view of the whole village and the opposite hillside. Unfortunately, it was a little bit too much house for him, and he lost it to foreclosure and moved to White Plains. But the house remained, had several subsequent owners, and it's more or less as it has always been. One moment, please. Also, in recent years, it has been painted as it probably originally was, and they believed in lots of colors in earth tones. There we go. Double click on that. Franklin Montross and William Ackerley houses. There we go.
Well, we was talking about Ackley right now, but you want to...
Let's do Ackerley. Here we go. See?
Gorgeous.
Up until about 25 years ago, this was not considered a good thing to do. It was probably painted white at one point or another. But, and I don't know, I don't think it's the present owner, but at any rate, this is really how those houses looked. They were romantic. And this was based on European models of sorts, but it's very typically American. As I say, we don't have very many of them, and it's in beautiful condition, and very much as it always was. Now we can go over to the other one.
You just need to hit the next button on the down below.
Oh, yeah, down there. This is one of our first suburban subdivisions. This was developed by John I.D. Bristol and his son-in-law, Albert Turner. And it was started off more or less at the beginning of World War I. It was called Perry Heights because John Bristol was the descendant of Commodore Perry. And there's a little plaque on Mill River Road to that effect. But the lots are relatively large, and the houses are fairly substantial. This was the upper part of it, what's called Perry Circle, and this is right at the dividing line. It's one of the first houses that was there. It's an important development for the community because it really was about the first of what became the way the town developed. Are there any questions? Okay. I hope you will follow our recommendations and declare both of these monuments for the Newcastle landmarks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
I so
Thanks, Greg.
declare.
Okay, any public comments on both these landmark designations? Eric, you want to say anything? Well, that's goes without saying.
When the house was originally built, there were no trees. Oh, I'm sorry. I figure I'm enough of a loudmouth, everybody can hear me. When the house was originally built, there were no trees going up Hamilton. If you take a look at that picture that shows the fire truck in front of Greeley's statue, it was from the early 1900s. The hill was completely denuded of any trees going up there. And Mr. Montrose's sons told me that what he did was the master bathroom is over the front door, and he could look out that and look down at the front door of the bank. And if any employee arrived late for work, he knew it. The employee would hear about it in due course. So. In any case, it's a nice house to live in.
Okay,
Two gorgeous homes,
yeah,
and really of their period, I mean architecturally of their period.
okay. So, no public comment? Motion to close the hearing?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Should we do the resolutions now? What do you want? Yeah, why don't we just do it?
Okay, I move to designate 2 Hamilton Avenue as a Newcastle historical landmark.
Second.
Hamilton
Drive.
Drive, sorry. Can you
Second.
correct that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to
Jeremy.
designate 39 Highland Avenue as a Newcastle historical landmark.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thumb drive. I like where you keep the thumb drive. Little pill canister there.
All right, what are you moving on to
All
now?
right, great.
I move to open the public hearing on the amended local law for Cold War exemption.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nick, do you want to explain?
So Nick, you want to just give us a little preview, please?
Certainly. So the New York State allows municipalities to offer an exemption for qualified individuals who are Cold War veterans as defined in the state statute and the town code. So the town opted in many years ago to allow this exemption. The state statute says that you're only allowed to receive this exemption for a period of 10 years. The state statute was modified last year to remove that exemption period, so you could have that exemption, benefit of that exemption for as long as you were qualified and owned that property. So because the town had to opt into that statute and offer it to its residents, it also needs to modify its town code to now be consistent with the state law if it wishes to do so. As discussed at prior work sessions, the town wishes to take advantage of that and offer its residents the ability to have that Cold War exemption for as long as they own the house and are qualified without any durational limit. So the proposed local law that is the subject of this hearing and before the town board simply removes the durational limitation on the ability to qualify for that exemption.
Which is consistent with the state change.
And we also, the inquiry that we made was, is it feasible and legal to potentially extend this to those who served actively, for example, for the Gulf War, Operation Iraqi Freedom, as opposed to limiting it to through 1991?
Right, and I do believe that under this exemption, it's only applicable to Cold War, and the municipality would not have the ability unless the state has enacted legislation. But
Or
I
we can
will
ask for
confirm
home-
that, and you could ask for home rule legislation, or ask the state to, one, adopt a law that would apply statewide, but also for a special exemption that would apply just in Newcastle. So I'm going to speak to the assessor, Josh Herman, as well as Judson Siebert in my office, who does the tax cert work and is familiar with tax laws, to look into that and report back to the board.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comments on this public hearing? It's a proposed change? Okay. What?
How many we have and what the discount is?
It's basically, what, 50,000, it takes away $50,000 on your assessed value.
No,
I'm sorry, on your
Market
market
value.
value. So, for example, if your market value is $1 million, okay? It's as if your market value is $950,000. And then, that's basically your assessed value is like 20% of that. So,
So
Right
there's
now, it
11
applies to about
11
11 homes. It doesn't mean people won't move in who also qualify, but right now it's
Or
11.
for that matter, people who don't know about it.
so it basically just knocks off 50,000 off the value of your home for assessment purposes. Maybe this one we should keep the public hearing open, just for written
Yeah.
comments.
Absolutely. To January 23rd? I'll tell you what, written comments? So, how about the 22nd, January 22nd, at close of business for written comments? And then we'll have it back on the 23rd for a determination?
That's fine.
Sounds good.
Right, so I move to close the public hearing and to leave it open for written comments until 5 PM on January 22nd.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next one we have our local law amending Chapter 111 concerning snow removal and sidewalk repairs.
I move to open that
Some
public
letters.
hearing.
Second.
I think there's
Wait.
three.
Three what?
Three comments?
We received letters.
We did.
You sent a letter.
Three written comments?
Right, so
Do we
the,
have to vote to open it?
Yes,
Let's open
I
the hearing.
second.
Is this a continuation or just open? No, no,
continuation.
it's a continuation. No, you
Yeah.
just, okay, it's a continuation. I just didn't know
Yeah.
if we had to make that clear.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so, all right, basically, this is something that we're still, I know Eric is here, and we're still accepting public comments, and I think I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we all agree that 4 hours is too short, and we're definitely going to be tweaking that. And we still have a lot of work to do as far as just, a lot of issues have been raised about business improvement districts and things like that. In fact, I intend to ask that we have that on a work session next week, talking about business improvement district. And so we have a lot of issues to discuss, not just with sidewalk, snow removal, but also with sidewalk repairs. We have nice new sidewalks going in, granite curbing. We're equally concerned about the type of salt that merchants would use.
Yeah, I think
We all have a vested interest in making sure the sidewalks are maintained a certain way. So this is a conversation that, it's a broader conversation that we're going to be having in the context of this local law.
Yeah, I still like the idea of potentially DPW taking responsibility for the sidewalks in town.
I'm curious, Eric, as somebody who's sort of plugged into the business community, has there been a lot of chatter among business owners about this local law?
You got to come up to the mic again, only because they can hear you at home.
We hear you fine.
Eric Nicolais. No, there hasn't been a lot of chatter. Mainly what we've been hearing from the tenants is regarding the snow removal, which you got an email from me on as far as that's concerned. I've discussed this with Jill in the past. I recommended that private contractors be hired, but apparently union regulations prohibit this, or the union's contract, let's put it that way. I've suggested in the past that the town should negotiate with unions to bring in more flexibility if needed in order to get the job done quicker. I don't know whether that's ever been followed up or not. The other question which I've raised is that considering the amount of funds that are paid by the merchant or the building owners within the parking district, that if it's a question of inadequate funds to pay the overtime, then we should take a look at whether or not we should be amending the amount that's collected. But as I indicated, the proportion of taxes that I pay individually compared to the town taxes that I pay, the two of them are getting pretty close to being equal to each other as far as that's concerned. That applies to the other 28 property owners within the, the district. My feeling is that the snow should have been out of there by Sunday night, not Monday night. I don't know whether that would have increased the overtime. They were paying
Well,
over.
it has nothing to do with it. It has to do with how cold it is and how icy the conditions were and our ability to be able to clear it and not leave a sheet of ice underneath it. If you're
Okay.
talking about 2 degrees and 3 degrees.
I understand,
All right.
you and I have discussed it.
And you and I will continue. It's got nothing to do with overtime. It has to do with how tired the guys are. I had 2 crews of 8 guys each out with water main breaks.
Okay.
So if the same guys are plowing and water main breaks, I can't, and they're working Saturday and Sunday, which we were because of water main breaks, I can't ask them to then
Well, I
work
wasn't
Sunday
aware of the
night.
water main breaks, but My feeling is, that, given no other objections or obstructions to the thing, I think 4 days is the limit that should be done to get that snow out of there. If there's ice, I'll give that up as a conditional question, and they're working on the brakes, but I think that the goal should be set for after the snow is over, that 4 days to get that done should be object, but not necessarily cast in iron.
Okay, right, as long as it's not an intervening snow. So we had the snowstorm Thursday.
Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday night.
All right, and then
weekend.
Monday there was another snow event scheduled. So the problem is like, if I bring the guys in Sunday night to clear it, I don't have them available to
Right.
do the regular.
And Eric, also, yeah, just one sec. I did get a call from a merchant Saturday morning who said the parking lot was fine, with the exception of some spots behind her store, and we immediately sent a plow guy over there, and he cleared it away. So, you know, one of the merchants had no problem with the parking lot on Saturday morning.
Well, I'm sort of, I've had some people call me up, let's put it that way, since I've sort of turned into the mouthpiece.
Okay.
So can I ask a question which doesn't have to be answered now, but since we're sort of talking if a bid district, whether it's a bid or whether it's gonna be a maintenance district, however you wanna call it, we already have the district identified,
Right, the parking district.
the parking district.
Actually, the sidewalks that are being done extend beyond the parking district.
All right?
Parking district basically goes from Bank of America up to the pharmacy,
Right.
and, you know.
So,
Yeah.
so the question, and I see Mr. Latimer here, so I'll ask it, but the question I have for you is, I know that with certain other special districts, there was the ability, and I'm gonna get the name all wrong, but it was in essence a transportation company? There was, or a transportation
Corporation.
authority, a
Transportation
corporation?
Corporation, but that's for utilities.
That's for utilities, but can a similar concept be applied to this so that
Okay.
the town can, do you know what I mean? So it won't have to
We'll
be.
put it, let's
I
let's
do,
put
we
it on the
can, we
work
can look
session.
into that and find out. We have to see if what the specific purpose of this district being formed was for, because maybe we can get it into that language.
And
So
can
I'll
we,
work with Jill and look into
and then
that.
can we amend the mission of a district?
Right,
Okay.
I'll look into
Let's,
that.
we'll put that on the work session, we'll talk about it. Right now, I'd like, Eric,
Okay,
thank you very much.
all right.
All right, take care.
Might you consider adjourning this to February 13th to allow us to do some discussion during the workshop?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
yes.
we're gonna welcome George Latimer right now.
Why
then
don't we
we'll continue
adjourn
with
this
the-
for George and
Oh,
then?
we don't need to adjourn the hearing, Latimer. We don't need to adjourn the hearing, we just continue it after he's finished. So I just want, yes,
Suspend it.
suspend the hearing for
Hold in debate.
about a half an hour, 40 minutes. And I'd like to welcome our new county executive, George Latimer. And thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mr.
you very much.
Supervisor, members of the council, thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt the middle of a public discussion. I was a councilman myself when I first started years ago, and I suspect these meetings, when they go on as late as they do, I don't want to add too much to it, to add to your, but I did want to stop by at the discussion, invitation of the town supervisor to say hello and to open the door of communication between the town and the county in whatever way is best for the benefit of the town and the town residents. I have not had the pleasure of representing this town in my prior legislative career, so where I'm an unknown quantity prior to election and maybe after election, I thought it'd be helpful for us to at least say hello and to indicate our willingness to work with you on the issues that you have. Since I do have an experience in municipal government, I have a great respect for what you're doing and how much time it takes, how little compensation you get for it. And you're in a position, unlike, say, the state legislature, where you're dealing with your constituents right in front of you every day. You're not buffered from it, and you have to deal with those things up front. So I respect that greatly as an individual. I also came to share with you a policy that we've just established at the state, which I think might be of some interest, and we'll have to figure out how it applies. If you don't mind, I'm going to hand it to your administrator and give copies around, and this is certainly available for anybody in the public that'd like to see it. But we've established by executive order a good neighbor policy between the county government and all the local governments, so in this case, the town of Newcastle. And what it basically says is whenever the county government has a decision to make of some significant nature that directly affects a municipality, generally speaking physically, where there's county-owned property, but it may also involve a service as well, that we have to come and send a delegation to your town board meeting to give you a briefing on that change before we take it into effect. and that we would have, after that briefing, commissioners, whatever level of individuals are involved in that decision, would give you then 60 days for your town board to evaluate what the proposal is and how it might affect your town, that you would have time to have, excuse me, a public meeting of some focus, so residents could come and speak about the idea, the issue, whatever it might be. And then at the end of that 60-day period, that we would welcome your letter of support, neutrality or opposition on whatever the proposal is. The county reserves the right to do what it has to do on its property or with its authority, but we are neighbors. And good neighbors would be, Bob, if you and I lived next door to each other and I was going to put up a shed on my property, I would call you and I'd show you the plans and you'd determine if it affected the drainage or the shade or whatever it is in your next door property. And that's what neighbors should do. And that's what the county government ought to do with the town government and the village governments and the city governments of the county. At the end of that time, we might cancel the plans, we might modify the plans, we might do the same thing we were planning to do, but at least you know that your voice would be heard and that your residents' voice would be heard. And that is now a binding policy on all members of the county executive branch. I have given it to the Board of Legislators for their consideration as to whether or not they choose to turn it into legislation that would lock it into law, which they may do. And if they do, then it would extend beyond whatever my tenure as a county executive is. We have a lot of work to do in the county. We have our fiscal issues, as you have your fiscal issues. We have responsibility that we're both going to be dealing with the aftermath of whatever the state does to close their budget gap. We'll be dealing with whatever the federal government is going to do. We've already seen actions they've taken that are going to affect us already, and more of that is coming. But at least we ought to be neighbors and we ought to be friends. We ought to be able to help you as you see fit. And I would invite your team, your administrator, whatever group of electeds you want to bring down to White Plains. I'd like you to come down and meet our new senior management team. Ken Jenkins, who's a deputy county executive, John Nona, who's a neighbor of yours, who's our new county attorney, Joan McDonald, who's our director of operations, Catherine Chaffee, our director of communications, and some of the existing individuals who chair different commissioners and chair different other offices. And whichever ones of those interact with your town government, we'd be happy to talk about what are the issues or priorities on your mind. We can do that down in White Plains. And if you like, at some point in time down the line, we'll wait till the snow disappears. We'll come back, hop on a little bus, take a tour of your town. You can point out the different issues and things. I know there's some very significant issues that you have before you that involves the town, that involves the county, and we'd be happy to see that side by side with you. And if we can find common ground, we will. And hopefully we'll do it productively for both of us. So that was the purpose of my brief visit and the interruption of your schedule. I'm happy to take any questions if I can answer them. I've been on the job 9 days, so it's a little early yet for me to. I have found where the men's room is on the 9th floor, so I'm ahead of the game. But insofar as you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them if I can.
Well, I mean, I know your time is limited, and I will express some of the major concerns that I've heard from residents over the past, couple of years. One is the gun shows, which you took care of, so, thank you very much. That was something that, this town board and prior town board felt strongly about, and we wrote to the county executive about that. An issue that's affecting a lot of residents right now is the airports, and I'm not talking about the privatization of the airports. I'm talking about the number of private and charter jets. And, we have a lot of residents complaining. It's a quality of life issue, and it's a problem. It's gotten worse over the years. And
this is both volume, I mean, I am also a neighbor of the airport, as are you, but it's volume during the day, and is it also volume outside of the voluntary curfew hours as well, I assume?
Well,
yeah,
I think it's even,
subject to,
one of the issues that I think we're having is, I believe it's runway 6, that when the weather is a certain way, the planes come in and there's a concern, and I don't know if it's a fair one or based in fact, but I know there's a concern that maybe planes are coming in at a lower altitude, and obviously the county executive is not the FAA, Town of Newcastle is not the FAA, but if there's any channels that can be opened and explored, because if they are coming in lower, more frequently, we can't change the weather, what can be done to address that? Is there a way to maybe make them come in, higher? I'm not a technical savvy person in this area, but I know that's a concern as well. And it's specifically, my understanding is that particular runway. So anything that can be addressed on that front.
I'm obviously going to ask you to summarize this in a memo or email after the conversation. I'd welcome all of these things. We have a lot of issues with the airport, as you pointed out, but we're happy to identify these and meet with the appropriate people to determine what we can do and what's within our authority to act, what we can do unilaterally, and then what is beyond our ability, but what which we can advocate to the FAA if that's where the power of the issue resides.
I wanted to just address a couple other things and not put you on the spot, so you don't have to give an answer now, just
Okay.
things to think about. I understand that there's a possibility temporarily to raise some sales tax dollars or raise the sales tax to help deal with the budget. If it's a temporary increase, I know now we get, as a municipality, this is my understanding, we get back some of those sales tax that are generated. So I don't know if a decision has been made, but when the time comes to potentially increase temporarily, if that's what ultimately happens, that we'd be able to, as a local municipality, still get back some of those dollars and not lose that opportunity.
I can tell you this much about it. And any sales tax increase would have to go through the state legislature. In my informal conversations with my immediately former colleagues, they have indicated that it's unlikely we would see something like that. But what I can tell you is any addition that might ever happen would definitely have the continuation of the share back. So the 1% addition that was made back in 1991 that had the share for both town governments, municipal governments, and school districts, any additional changes that would be made would also continue the share back. That would be part and parcel of what we would do. But in fairness, I don't expect that we will be doing that this year. Whatever our needs are for revenues, the political climate, I don't think allows for any significant increase in that tax.
And I had two other short questions that, again, for consideration. We obviously see issues with Ossining, for example, and neighboring communities, North Castle, just by the nature of, that's the way it is, they're our neighbors. When, in terms of this executive order, ultimately, it's discretionary for the county to decide what to do, if anything. It goes before the planning board, and then it would ultimately go to the county executive. I just understand that process.
Well, the action may not be a a planning function. It could be any type of a function. It could be a major repair that has to be made on a county road that would, in theory, shut a road down for some length of time. It might be an action taken in a county park or in a park right-of-way. It could be on a county roadway. There's a host of different things that might fall into that category that would be affected by this order. Excuse me. It's not so much we're approving a site plan the way a planning board would at a municipal level. We don't have home rule zoning or planning authority at the county level, but that is left for you to do. But it would be action that the county would take on county-owned property in some way, shape, or form. And by us taking that action, you might determine this will generate traffic on our streets, or this will cause an inconvenience and a detour for our residents as they travel through the town, or this will create noise, or it will create a water runoff issue. And anytime we're prepared to make a decision on county land, which we have the authority to do without submitting it to your approval, what we are doing is we're slowing down the process so you can input
Allow
on
us to be
that
heard.
decision, to be heard, and enough to hopefully, if there's a plausible way to adjust the decision that's about to be made. Because my experience previously has been when the authority rests, and I'll leave it to council to determine this, but when authority rests within an entity, they act. If they have to act with a certain amount of responsibility for public notice, then they do it at the basis of the notice. If no notice is required, then they just act, and they do it without particular concern for what happens, and they do it as of right decision. I want to stretch that process out because I want, in your particular case, this town, but then each of the other towns and villages to have an input in that process, even if it is an as-of-right decision that we're going to make. Now, slowing it down applies in most cases. There is a provision in case there's an emergency. If there's a hurricane and the road is damaged dramatically, or we're directed by a superior government to us that says you will do this and you will do this under consent, then it's really not our decision to make, and we'll have to do it. But if we have the discretion to do it, and we have the discretion to do it when we do it, then we make the decision to stretch it out so that you have input. The only gray area, Jeremy, will be if there's something that you hear about or see that we haven't put through this process. And in that case, I would just say your supervisor will send a letter. It's come to our attention, or we believe it is true that the county is considering doing X, Y, and Z. This should apply under your good neighbor policy. And that, as far as I'm concerned, as county executive, that will be enough to trigger the process. And then we'll certainly have a call. I assume that the village administrator gets calls from county departments from time to time on different things, and then there's an assessment made how much of an impact it is. And then you advise the council, this is a significant thing and ought to be discussed, or this is sort of an ordinary, matter that doesn't really require further discretion. And we'll just play it as it goes. I spoke to our commissioners today, and I tried to give them some general direction, and I said, err on the side of inclusion, err on the side of notice and notification.
And would this include changes to the airport?
Yes, oh, absolutely it would.
That's good.
That would be the easy one to identify.
What about additional leases, though? Like if you get another private charter jet company wants to, that's part of the problem.
Well, I would say if we know that there's going to be a significant increase, let's say a fixed-based operator is going to expand their operations significantly, and we know what that's going to generate in terms of air traffic, then I say that would be a significant change. If FBO Apple left and Banana came in and it was a transfer to a different entity, I wouldn't consider that significant unless somehow the second entity was going to come in with a heavier responsibility and demand. But we'll have to play it as it goes along because this is the first time we've done this. I don't know if it's been precedented anyplace else in the state. This is an idea I've had for a long time as I've observed government operate in the different levels that I've been at. So we'll play it as it goes along. But as I said, I'm going to err on the side of inclusion. If you hear something and it seems to be plausible or accurate, then that's good enough for us to take the extra steps. It's a matter of respect. Without knowing each of you, I know some of you, but I know that as council members, you've put yourself before your community has elected you to these positions, they trust your judgment in the context of your term, and you ought to be consulted if it affects your town. That's the way I view it. It's the broad base of it.
I have one more for you. Before I do that, I appreciate you humoring us and coming here.
I'm happy to be here.
I think this is a fairly easy ground ball. As you probably know, we've had issues with sewage. We have a lot of issues, random farms, yeshiva, but that aside, there's been multiple communities getting roughly 10 million, if not, I believe, in fact, $10 million. My question is, at some point, I believe Deputy Jenkins wanted to potentially have a sewage plant or something northern part of the county. I'm hopeful that we can still count on the county as a changed capacity, and obviously he's not the county executive, but to help us to try to find solutions and dollars to resolve our ongoing issue, and it is an ongoing issue that we need help with, so.
Yeah, notwithstanding any position that Ken might have taken as a legislator, now that he's in the executive branch, and he's a good friend, but there's one county executive.
That's right,
We
that's
will-
why
we will make those
I'm hopeful
decisions.
you'll continue and
And of course,
assist
Ken
us
is a
in
very
that
good man, and we competed, so I don't know if this is exactly Lincoln's team of rivals, but whatever it is, we're going to move in a certain direction that I think will be cooperative. Now, probably what we need to do is have a meeting, since the rest of the team is new. Director of Operations, gentlemen, is new to this. Probably should have a meeting where we get the players around the table, rediscuss where we are in the process, how far away are we, what kind of dollars and cents we're talking about, what kind of municipal impact. Just in terms of our operations, Vincent Kapicki has been serving temporarily to supervising the Department of Environmental Facilities sewer treatment effort, coming out of his position as DPW commissioner. We are going to bring in a new DPW commissioner and have Commissioner Kapicki be full-time on environmental facilities. Once that happens in the next month, then we will have a full-time commissioner in this area to focus specifically on these things, and I think we're ready to have a meeting and
Thank you very,
come
very
to the
much.
table.
I know we're all appreciative, thank you.
There's one more thing I'll throw in there is, we have this, we have a problematic intersection with the railroad crossing at Roaring Brook Road and the Sawmill River Parkway. And, since 1950s, there's been talk about getting a bridge there. Back in 1950s, and our town historian is here, he can attest to that, Gray Williams.
Back to 1955, 50, really.
Yeah, so.
I only go back to 1953, so
So that cost, the projected cost back then was $200,000, now the projected cost is between 20 and $30 million.
And we're asking for that today.
And, no.
all right, let's see,
No.
have the county checkbook, see what we can do.
In your role as sitting on the New York State Metropolitan Transportation Commission as county executive, hopefully it'd be a project that they would sponsor. We need federal dollars.
Right, it's,
and the
it's
more
much bigger dollars than
Oh, of
you or I
course.
can come up
No,
with.
no, I'm just talking about in your role as on the Transportation Commission.
Bob, do you have a study somewhere along the line that has studied the intersection, has made the recommendations and
Yes.
why and all that stuff? Can you send us a copy, dust it off the shelf, and new guys will look at it for the
Brand
first
new.
time?
The problem is that the MTA is coming in with these safety improvements, and it's just gonna make traffic even worse. And if we, when you eventually come and we do our bus tour, we'll go to that intersection at 4 or 5 o'clock, or at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you'll see, and it's gonna get worse.
7:30.
It's gonna get worse with,
Chapel
Chapel
Crossing.
Crossing, and it's gonna get worse with the safety improvements that are coming, with the MTA, so it's,
So I would say, obviously, let's start it with the report. Now, Mike Capowicz has represented you for a long time. He's a very intelligent guy. I'm sure he's looked through all of these different angles. I'll consult with him. And then when we do these follow-up sessions that we're talking about, a meeting down there and then coming back here to tour, highlight these things. And, we'll do our best to get the aid that we need at those levels. Hopefully, the governor owes me something over time here, and we'll see if we can capitalize on that. But I appreciate you highlighting all these things. And if you don't mind, if you can summarize these things that we've talked about into one memo for us, that would be helpful. I will share it with our team. I'll share it with Board of Legislators leadership as well. So we'll have a grocery list. We'll find something on the list that we can do.
Thank you very
and
much.
if that's your protection over there, I'd say be careful out there.
He happens to be a relative, so.
I know that, I know. He's a good guy.
Good.
So,
If I may, sorry, just one additional question.
Yes,
I-
Ivy.
I was thrilled to see you at the State of the State when I was watching on the live stream last week. And one of the initiatives that I noticed that's included in the book for this year pertains to making the shared services commissions at the county level permanent. And I assume that that's probably something that's going to pass, and it's probably something that's going to be unfunded. And I just wonder if you're supporting that, and if sort of what you see the county's role being going forward.
Well, Ivy, what we're looking for is the funding, because I think the general sense that we all have is that the concept of shared services, very attractive concept. People who don't follow municipal government hear it, and it sounds immediately attractive. Oh, there must be duplication. We all know a little bit more about how this thing is structured. If there's going to be any economy that would help you lower property taxes, then it's going to have to come with incentivized money from the state. Now, in his general comments, the governor made reference to that. My experience as a former state legislator is the State of the State message is thematic. Look at the budget when it comes out, which I think is about a week or two away, and see what kind of dollars and cents there are. My general observation over the years has been there are some services that are better done regionally, and there are some services that are better done locally. So there are things that we should devolve down to you. That means an obligation at your budget, but you have a control over it. And there are some things that should be regionalized, which means you lose control, but you also lose the responsibility for paying for it. And in that mixture, if our budget goes up a little, but yours goes down more, and the net result to the taxpayer between those two lines is a plus, then it's worth looking at. If it turns out not to be a plus, then we're just doing it for showtime, and I don't think we have the energy, the time to do it just for showtime. But it really depends. What I conceptually, this is vague, we have to put teeth onto this. If the resources we have can put together almost like a menu in a restaurant, you link into this service or that service or that service, it will cost you this. You look at that service and you say prudently, we do this now, it costs us X. The county says they could do this for X minus Y, let's investigate it. If our number is X plus some other number and it's higher than what you're doing it as, then you bypass it. Now, that doesn't get down to what you might choose to do next door to Mount Pleasant, next door to North Castle. And maybe that is where some of the money will incentivize as well, two towns together. I've seen in other parts of the county, joint sanitation commission, joint this, joint that. It really depends on the similarities of the communities and the joint willingness. And I know that you'll be dialoguing with your colleagues in the surrounding towns to determine where those things are. From the county standpoint, if we're able to provide a service regionally and it makes sense for you to do it, then we'll pursue it.
Yeah, I think
But-
I love this idea. And I would suggest to you that the recommendations that came out in 2017 from the first go-round were really highly focused in IT, and I really think there's a lot of opportunities to explore additional shared services beyond just this sort
We've
of IT
looked at
service realm.
the plan that came out of Suffolk County, which had some very robust numbers.
Yes.
Now, Suffolk is not Westchester. There's some comparables. The Westchester report I don't need to be negative. It didn't get us where we wanted to go. So we're looking at other county models. Do they do something better than we're doing? Is it applicable to us? And it's going to be a long haul, and there'll be a lot of work where we sit down at a table, and we go from this general concept that sounds good, and we get down into the real brass tacks of dollars and cents, and does it really make sense for you to chime in or not? And then you'll make an assessment, the people of Newcastle. Will they accept that or not accept that? And every community is different. It depends on the service, and but we'll work with you. That's the bottom line. We'll sit with you. We'll work with you. We're not going to play those games that I've seen played where one level of government throws something out there just to embarrass another level of government, like you didn't do your job, but we did our. I mean, that's wasted effort. And so we're going to try to avoid that and see if we have something real. And if it's real and you want to do it, then you do it. If it's not real, you don't want to do it, then we go forward and do something else. So I know I've taken up a lot of your time. You're welcome to reach out to me at any time you'd like. I'll leave a couple of my business cards with your administrator, with the office number, and feel free. And you're very gracious to give me this much time.
Thank you.
Have a happy new year, hopefully not too much more snow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming. Take care. Good night. Okay. All right. So that was great. Thank you. So now we will unsuspend our public hearing.
Cassie, you're up.
Cassie, you're going to say something. Please.
Cassie Ward with the
Oh, wait,
Newcastle.
you can't start like that. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
what?
No, I'm just kidding.
He's
I'm just
giving you a hard time.
I'm just kidding. That was perfect, actually.
It worked.
He's
That was
so
perfect.
mean.
It really does.
It did work perfectly.
Newcastle Historical Society. We're at 100 King Street. And so we received the letter where we could comment on the proposed modifications to Chapter 111 of the Newcastle Town Code.
Cassie, I'm going
And
to
so-
interrupt you for 1 second. I want you to turn around and, no, the people didn't stay for your.
It's not her-
They didn't stay.
Okay, it's okay.
You have gray, all right,
Can we
okay.
stop teasing?
Everyone said I would be on TV, so make a shameless plug for the Historical Society. Well, you've already mentioned the snow removal. I know our guys, our contractors are really good about clearing it as soon as possible. Even with that, I do think the 4 hours would probably be too short, just depending on the different storms. Then we had, and you received our written comments, so I won't necessarily get into
They were
all
also
of them.
circulated to the board.
Yeah,
Okay.
we all received
Seen
them.
them.
Okay, so then the one that I want to ask you the most about is about the liability issues. So in additions to the town code, it talks about how the town, even if the town, at least in our understanding of it, did any work, that you would not be liable if somebody was injured or died on that sidewalk. And then furthermore, since you're about to start major construction on the sidewalks, as the owner and occupant of the property, how are we supposed to keep the sidewalk in a reasonably safe condition while it's under construction?
I think council, can you help answer that question?
Sure. With the issue of liability, there was actually comments raised at the last public hearing as well, so we are re-examining that because there's been some good questions raised with respect to the scope and whether we've perhaps overreaching. So we're taking that into consideration. As far as the obligation during the construction, the contractors actually have the obligation under the contract to make sure they're maintaining the sidewalks that they're working on in a safe condition while it's under their control. Once it's released from their control, you have the same obligation that you currently have, just to make sure. So we're not foisting any additional obligation currently. But
So
this law
basically,
does
that would
change
kind of
it.
put it on hold while the contractors are, and that would all be in writing in their contracts.
Well, that's in
and-
their contract, right? They
Okay.
have the obligation. You still have, so, if they haven't actually done any actual digging, you still have your general obligations that you do now. But if they have taken control and changed the contour of that and they're actually working it, that's under their insurance and their
So
obligation to maintain.
if it's metal plates, as Kaz said, is a historical society under the obligation to remove the snow from metal plates? Because, and not to make this such an issue, but metal plates are
Hopefully it
slippery.
won't snow in April.
No, it's-
Right.
No, it wouldn't be there.
In the summer.
But if someone were to
April.
trip on the metal plate, and because it's improperly laid down or something of that nature, that obligation should then be on the contractor because they're the ones who have that responsibility to
cost.
install. Yes.
So then for the Historical Society in particular, I think maybe it gets even more complicated because at least with our current streetscape plan in connection with our consent and release form, a note 12 on one of the amendments says that the town will be responsible for the maintenance of our new sidewalk and the seating area. So I don't know if that's something that pertains particularly just to the Historical Society, or if that will be townwide. I know there was talk about the business district in terms of the business maintenance, which I know you discussed before. And so I think for us, we even need then more clarification. Is maintenance, bricks and mortar, or is that also snow removal and different, and so we just need more clarification so that, we're following the book and that.
And I think we're aware of that. We actually need to, at staff level, we've been discussing what is the appropriate guidance we can give the property owners, especially because we want, after all this money is invested, to maintain the look and the
Right.
quality of the area. So we, at staff level, we're having that discussion. It's folding into whether to create the business improvement district and what's the best way to ensure that it gets done and it's not a burden on either the town staff or on the property owners. With respect to that note 12, that pertains really just to that small public improvement area.
Like the common area.
Yes.
Okay.
So you've raised all good questions that we don't have answers to that we're working through and we are aware of.
Okay. And
So-
then, and the new curbs will be granite, you said, which I know
Yes.
Mr. Nicolason has said is, superior, and it will hold up against a lot more of the wear and tear.
Like
But
your curbs.
having a deteriorating curb
Yes.
that I tried for 2 years to by the book fix, I know what a challenge that is. So I don't know how that would be addressed in the code. But again, getting back to that the occupant and owner is fully liable for keeping it safe or in a reasonably safe condition. That's a state road with a lot of hurdles to.
But that's why we're using granite curbs throughout. Your curb in particular, the concrete curbing and just the beating it takes is the very reason why the board thought it was so worth it to put granite down, because there's no comparison
Okay.
on how they hold up.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Seriously, that was amazing.
So just to go back, so if we are sort of considering, and it's going to be on the agenda to, I don't, bid is, I think, a misuse of the word. So maybe we can come up with the right description of what it is, a maintenance district or?
Well, I
We
mean,
should talk about that.
We'll
at
talk
the
about it
work
in
session.
No,
work
but
session, yeah.
but if we are going to talk about it, if possible, are we currently working on what it would take for us to take on that responsibility, both in manpower and expense?
That'll all be discussed when we talk about it in the work session.
Okay.
Okay, so, all right, any other
So we move
public comments
So
of this public hearing?
move
Yeah,
to
so can we
adjourn.
continue this one to the 13th, because I'd just like to push it out a little bit, give us a little
Okay.
bit of time,
Yep.
but, okay.
Some motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
to February 13th.
February
February
13th.
13th.
Second.
I'll second it, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi. Hey, Jill,
Okay.
do we have to open that door?
It was the county executive who closed it this time, though, just for, the other one isn't. You know, this-
It's a half
Yeah,
open.
yeah, the other one's open, I mean.
The other one's open.
I know.
I mean,
you're
do we
not
need-
supposed to keep them both open.
If there were 6 doors, would we be required to keep all 6 open?
Yes, we would.
It's actually swinging back.
Good thing we don't have a lot of doors.
That one closed on its own, so
I
technically
don't
it
think
doesn't
anyone's
matter.
going to be coming in.
Didn't do anything wrong, we
That's
tried.
All right.
Okay, next public hearing is
The
refuse collection services.
I move to open the public hearing on the refuse collection services.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Cassie, you look like you're itching to come up again. Are you?
Any
Oh,
thoughts on
I didn't hear
refuse?
Okay,
That doesn't stop us from talking.
yeah,
Okay, Nick,
absolutely not.
Go ahead.
Nick, do you want to summarize it for us?
Page
So,
28.
You ready, or you want me?
no, sure, if you can.
So we had gotten, right now, our law is that we offer discounts for refuse special services, which is like backdoor services, to those individuals who are 75 and older and 70 and older with a doctor's note. We got a request from an individual who is 68 years old who unfortunately is undergoing chemo treatments right now and really could use a break on those special services. So Mary Deems, the former town clerk, approached the board asking whether or not the board might consider bringing the ages down so that instead of 70 with a doctor's note, 65 with a doctor's note, so that we could take and extend this courtesy and this service, this discounted services to more residents. And basically, that's what the local law is about.
Alternatively, I mean, I certainly support that, but alternatively, why can't we address it on a case-by-case basis as opposed to keep it as it is, and whether you're 52 when you have
Yeah, I mean,
unfortunate
I think-
issues, why not just case by case, so we have the ability to override, for lack of a better term, the law and implement this regulation?
I don't know,
It
if
seems
that
to
seems
me
like
that
a
we
slippery
should.
slope.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it seems to me that we should be separating the issue of whether you're a senior citizen from whether you have a disability.
Yeah, correct.
And
That's
so,
fair.
you know, if you have a disability and you're 64, you know, why would you not qualify for this? So, you know, if we set up a threshold and separate the two issues, I think the senior citizen exemption versus disability exemption should be two separate items.
I agree. I mean, realistically, what if someone's 35 and
Right.
cannot
Right.
walk a garbage can down to the end of the
The
driveway?
age is arbitrary when it's relating to a disability of some kind.
Right, I mean,
We need disability defined. It
Well, that's
can't,
my
you know, it's
concern,
very
right, how do you-
easy to get a doctor's note. It would have to be
You got two.
defined
But
as an
it's a- but
appropriate
it's a-
disability that, you know, inhibits one from being able to walk down.
But it's
for a
term we
prolonged
use-
period of
We're,
time.
we're already using, so we're already
Right.
using disability as a term and connecting it to 65. It's just a matter of decoupling it and
Well, I'm curious
defining it
what-
separately.
right now it's right, 65, it's who's certified by a physician to be disabled.
I don't think it's necessarily a slippery slope, in my opinion. I think it basically, if we basically just gives ourselves a window of, you know, a period, whether there's an age restriction or not, I think we could decide on a case-by-case
Yeah,
basis.
you know, how many people are gonna be so nefarious in this town
Right.
that they're going to get a doctor to sign off on some significant disability that would prevent them from walking out? You know,
Do you know how many, how many handicap parking permits we give to people?
I know I guess
It's-
in
it's
part
only a
that's
reduced-
true.
It's only a reduced fee. It's
It's
not.
a reduced fee. So
Yeah.
the only thing I'm thinking is that I'd like to leave it the way it is, but is there a way that we could add a,
Right.
add some sort of ability for the board to be able to consider special circumstances for
Well,
other?
disability is
But do we
critical.
even need to make it in front of the board? I kind of feel to a certain extent
Right,
that if
because-
somebody's making a reasonable request,
Who defines and determines?
but
if
I, town clerk or
Right,
somebody.
just, I don't know that you need to leave it with.
Sorry,
the-
Christina.
Right, I don't know that you need to leave with the board. We can find the right department, the
Yeah.
administrator, the controller, the town clerk, we can come up with that. And we just need to set the criteria.
Right,
Yeah,
and I
make
think
it
that there's
a headache,
probably
isn't it?
already some sort of mobility or a sort of physical disability that would prevent people from being able to do that. I'm sure that definition already exists somewhere. It may even be temporary disability, somebody broke an ankle.
I mean, we're gonna be,
No, I guess they wouldn't get the cheap rate.
all right.
Fair enough.
I mean, I
Is there
think,
an appeals process? We can go on and on. We can make everything a headache.
right, I mean, I think the intent of the,
I'm not opposed to that.
the intent of the reduction isn't so much the inability to move a garbage. I think the intent is just the recognition that your income may be
Reduced.
reduced due to either your age or your disability.
Different intent
So
of the
that's
law-
the
of the
intent,
law.
right.
Could be both.
Well, I mean, so in New York City, there's a rental increase exemption program, and they have separate programs for senior citizens and for the disabled. I mean, we may be able to look to that, to how they define disabled for that program as a guideline for how to.
So I,
I wasn't,
Because I don't actually see
So
the
I-
definition of disability
that in
in
here.
here. Where, did you see it? I never saw it.
no, it's just,
Yeah.
so I think what we, well, let me just check
Christina,
the
can
full
you get him
section.
I didn't know
back?
that I wasn't kicking him out. I was trying to keep I wasn't kicking him out. I was telling him to keep the door open.
Why'd you kick him out?
I didn't want to think it was a door. You have to keep the door open for open meetings. and the
You're
door
correct,
closed.
it's not defined in there. So I think we have a sense of a direction of the board to address the concern.
Text him, I know.
Right.
No idea.
Right, so what, if the board would like, what we can do is continue the public hearing. Let us examine what options can be done to reach out that new category of individuals with disabilities to make sure that we come up with a way that appropriately captures it. I mean, I understand the intent, we'll have to fiddle around with it at the staff level.
Okay,
So
so,
if you want to adjourn it,
yeah, we'll adjourn it.
or do you want to adopt it with this provision?
Oh, so this
I
guy can
sort
get
of
his
wanted
thing?
to adopt it just so that we could at least capture this particular individual who's made a
Then-
request.
Well,
to
can
the
we
board.
adopt it as it relates to this particular individual?
Can we make a motion to accept this particular individual while we're working on this
No,
law?
because it needs to be statutorily
Fine.
accepted. So
No,
what you
let's just
could,
adopt the law, and then we'll deal with it and address it. If someone else makes an application, well, so
Right.
be it for.
Or else let's just look into the other definition.
what you can do is,
We could always amend it
right, you can
again.
adopt this law, and then when we go
No,
to,
no, you gotta keep the door,
Rob,
you have to keep the door open. We have open meetings law. We have to have the doors open.
That's okay, thank you.
so what you can do, thank you for being the open meetings police tonight for me.
That's right. I wanna make sure that we abide by
Deputize
the law.
you.
Thank you.
He's
So,
trying.
So you want us to approve it to go to 65 with the
A doctor's.
documentation?
yes, and then we'll
And
look
then
into
knowing that we're
yours.
still gonna workshop this law to see if
And
there's
then-
anything we should change.
Exactly, and when we come up with addressing the situation that's raised tonight, we can then raise that back or otherwise address it.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
All right, so do we have, you want to do the resolution
the
now?
meeting?
no, motion to
Oh, yeah.
close the public hearing,
public comment.
and there is no
Nobody
public.
here
comment.
else- nobody
Doors
else
are
is
open
here.
now, or doors open.
Yeah. Motion to close the public hearing on the refuse collection services.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Should we do, well, now we're gonna move on to our resolution, so we might as well just do it
All
at
right,
that
go ahead.
time.
Shoot.
Okay, motion to approve a banner application for Greeley Youth Lacrosse Day. The banner will be up from June 4th through June 8th of 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Motion to approve cash out of 3 additional days of 2017 vacation time at the 2017 rate for Mary C. Deans.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to accept the resignation of John Garrow from the Department of Public Works effective retroactively from January 2nd, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A motion to sign the 2018 agreement between the Town of Newcastle and Santa Pro Disposal with a contract increase of 1.5% for 2018. The current contract is valid until December 21st, 2021, but this resolution grants the contractual increase.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to approve payment of claims in the amount of $384,368.05. 2017 expenditures totaling $370,044.86, and this year's $14,323.19, listed on the summary pre-check writing report and detailed voucher detail reports, all dated January 8th of this year. Checks will be issued and mailed to each claimant listed on January 10th, which is Wednesday.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Before you read this one, let me just, this is the one for the DPW department, the administrative intern.
Yes,
Did you talk to Jerry about maybe authorizing it for 6 months?
that's what we're doing.
Okay, thanks.
Although I authorize to establish the position of administrative intern,
Sure.
period.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Go ahead.
I move to appoint Meji Al-Brahimi as administrative intern at the rate of $15 per hour for 6 months, effective January 10th through June 9th, 2018, with an option for the town administrator to renew for an additional 6 months.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to accept the following monthly reports for December 2017, Town Clerk, Court Clerk, Development Department, and Receiver of Taxes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ivy, take us home. Do you have anything left?
I believe we go to 11.
Well,
11.
yeah, we have the landmarks ready.
We already did those, right? So
Yeah.
where are we?
Yeah, we're on 11.
Okay. I move to adopt a local law amending Chapter 120, Article 2, Section 6 of the Town Code concerning duration of exemption for Cold War veterans.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to enter into an agreement with Capital Markets Advisors LLC in Hopewell Junction for financial advisory services in accordance with the terms and fees outlined in the agreement dated January 3rd, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize entering into a contract with Municity of Red Hook, New York for software to create a temporary 2018 tax collection for the prepayment of 2018 taxes for the total amount of $1,850.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize retaining PKF O'Connor Davies, Munns and Dobbins LLP of White Plains, New York, for review of the Town of Newcastle's official statement as related to bonding for the total amount of $2,500.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to amend part-time employee hourly salary schedule for the year 2018 to include the following: Bill Maskeel, part-time building inspector at $65 an hour, $65, pardon me, an hour. Roberto Fortuna, part-time fire marshal at $40 per hour.
Second.
All in favor?
My apologies, just before you move to your next one, and I caught this, but you moved very quickly. A Code War local law, exemption local law, you actually closed the hearing but said you were going to keep it open for receipt of public comments until the,
Oh, we did?
Is
So
there any-
January
Is there any
23rd.
concern, I mean,
Oh, yeah, we did.
No, you don't, you're not obligated under the law to do so, and it's really your call if you wanted to do so. So you have,
So we can't make a resolution, is what you're saying?
well, you can do one of two things. You have to rescind one of those two resolutions. You can rescind a resolution you previously adopted when you said you closed the public hearing but left it open for public comment, or you rescind the adoption of a local law.
is there any reason why we're holding this open to give these?
No.
So I think we should just vote it out.
Yeah,
I-
Who's gonna object to?
let's
Then we'll
rescind
reopen it if we have to amend the law.
So do we need to disclose the public?
Right, so you would have to,
So I rescind the motion.
Motion to
To maintain the public hearing, to adjourn the public hearing until February 13th, I think, or January 22nd with public comments through January 21st. That motion, I rescind it because we've now closed the public hearing and made a motion to adopt the law.
so with the board's consent, I'll put that down in writing and to capture that intent.
Okay.
And then.
Thank you.
I-
Okay.
And for the record, I think that Lisa Catch, going forward, should always do the ad hoc. Respectfully.
Hey, this is way too
Second.
fun. This is a way to keep you young. When you get into this generation, you
favor?
need to
All in
keep the
favor?
juices
Aye.
going.
But
All
you're
right.
also missing the resolution with regard to the refuse.
Yes, we,
I handed that to Hala.
Okay, so,
Wait, it's my turn.
okay,
very good, thank you, Ira.
Turn, go for it.
Still going?
here, you can read the refuse
No,
one
I don't
too.
want that.
Did we do the amended
I move
depository? vote?
to, what am I doing here? Amend the
Designation of
the designation
depositories.
of depositories to be amended to include the following: account Wachovia Bank, Wells Fargo, as designated official town of Newcastle Bank depositories for the fiscal year 2018 as reflected below.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I move to amend the appointments for the following positions for two-year terms to expire on December 31st, 2019. Superintendent of Recreational Parks, Alfred I. Cusio. And instead of actually going through everybody, I will, as reflected below. Is that sufficient?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and I move to amend the local law of Chapter 72, Section 9 of the Town Code concerning senior citizen charges for driveway, garage, or backup services. And the amendment is to change, the purpose of this section is to amend Section B, where originally you had to be 70 years of old to qualify, and now you can be 65 years old or older, and you have a certification by a physician to be disabled, and you should be regarded as meeting the 75-year requirement. A resident is entitled to either a reduction under the subsection or subsection A or A above, but not both.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other add-ons?
That's how you keep yourself young.
Okay, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Being a town board member.
Second.
Second.
Is that it?
You have resolutions?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.